In order to make whole grain bread, the first thing that we need to do is to soak the grain. So what I've done here, this is the whole wheat flour and oats that I used that were mixed with 1 cup of whey and run through the dough cycle on my bread machine, and this has been sitting overnight. So the next step, now that we have this, I just wanted you to see that it is very dry and kind of crumbly, and that's what you want to look for. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to take that out. You can put it in a bowl or onto a plate, because we're going to put that back in just a minute. So we take that out, set that aside, and then we're going to add the liquid ingredients. Now I'm just going to put my ingredients in. I've been doing this so much I really don't measure anymore, but I've given you all the exact proportions, but they're really not that exacting. I think you can play with that, and if you have a loaf that doesn't rise quite as much, you can add a little bit of things that make it rise more. So I'm going to put in a couple tablespoons, like 2 to 3 tablespoons of whey. That's my tablespoon. And then about 3 tablespoons of my maple syrup. So that's 1, 2, 3. If you like it less sweet, you can go as little as 1. Then you're going to add in your oil. I use flax oil because my kids don't like flax seeds, so this is a way of still getting the omega-3s from the flax oil. So I put in about 1.5 tablespoons of the oil. And then I also add in at this point, so that it gets distributed well, I add in my salt. So it's 1.5 teaspoons of sea salt. And I also, because I want the yeast to get worked through well, I put the yeast in with my liquids at this point. So I'm going to put in, it's probably 2 to 2¼ teaspoons of yeast. And we put in lecithin. Lecithin helps give a fluffier loaf. About 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon, somewhere in there, depending on how soon I stop the flow. Lecithin is a very sticky substance to work with, and so I prefer not to use. I tried using a measuring spoon for that, and it was just so awful to wash. I just started pouring it directly in. And then the last thing that we'll put in is 1 egg. I like an egg in it. I used omega-3 eggs, so I get again a little bit more of those omega-3s, but it also makes a tender, lighter loaf. So you can do without the egg if you'd prefer. It's just something that I've started doing that I really like. So now at that point you have all your liquids in. We have our yeast in, and the only thing we need to put in now will be our soaked dough parts. So I just take that, and if it's in a more solid ball, I break it up. But just if it's nice and crumbly like that, you just crumble it in little pieces so that it'll get worked through with the other ingredients. So we're just going to crumble that all in small chunks, and then once that's all in, I will add in 3 tablespoons of gluten flour, which again helps. Whole wheat flour does not have much gluten in it, so your loaf tends to be kind of heavy, which I don't care for. So I add in the gluten flour, and usually, every now and again I have a hard loaf that for some reason weather or temperature didn't rise right, but usually ends up with a very nice tender loaf that even my kids' friends enjoy when they come. So to me that's always a good standard to use, is if other people who aren't used to it taste it and go, wow, this is really good. So there are all our crumbled up pieces. I'm just going to sprinkle the gluten flour over the top of that. There's 3. And now I'm going to put it in to the bread machine on the regular bread cycle and just let it run the full cycle. And at the end, let's see what our loaf looks like. Here's my finished loaf of bread that I've just taken out of the bread machine. I am putting it into this bread slicer. This is something that is made by West Bend. It has numbered grooves, and it's very, very handy when you're making your own bread because you can line up your knife and it goes straight across, and then you can just slice straight down. So I just want to take a slice of bread here so that you can get a sense for what the finished bread is going to look like. So here you can see is the bread. It's a nice, airy, light texture, very tender, and this is nice, fresh, and warm. I think it would make a really good snack with a little bit of butter and some blueberry jam. I think that's what I'll do right now.